A father and son killed outside their rural home.
It's a bloodbath. The minute I open the car, I can smell a flammable liquid.
The house had been burglarized back in 2017.
This seemed to be a targeted attack.
Promising leads quickly unravel.
Their wallets were missing, but there was no burglary of the home, no broken windows, no kicked-in doors.
It was pretty obvious. Somebody wanted us to believe that it was a robbery.
When detectives track down the gunman, their investigation takes an unexpected turn, exposing a betrayal that leaves a close-knit Christian community in shock.
He said that he was hired to do his job.
There was a text message. She said, yes, that was sort of our code.
Do what? You really want to play stupid? I'm serious now.
She offered him $20,000 to commit that murder.
It didn't sound right to me. I was in complete shock. How could they possibly think that she had done this?
August 18th, 2018. It's just before noon in Horry County, South Carolina, and police are responding to reports of a burned-out vehicle abandoned in a soybean field.
And it was unusual because, here's this car sitting in the middle of their field. They had no idea how it had gotten there.
All the doors were closed. It was obvious that the windows were covered in soot from the inside. So the initial officer that arrived opened the door just to see if anybody was inside. Nobody was in the vehicle, but somebody attempted to burn the vehicle.
He ran the license plate through dispatch, got the owner's name and address, and that was Robbie Ford.
They come up with an address roughly 15 to 17 miles away in Conway. They send an officer to the house. It's a residence owned by Mr. Robert Ford, Robbie's father.
The house is in the rural section of Horry County. It's mainly family farms. It's not very populated.
The officer goes there, knocks on the front door, gets no response, attempts to walk around to the back of the house.
He looked to his right and saw a male body laying outside the back door. He saw another male body laying on the grassy area.
The officer checks for signs of life, but both men are dead from apparent gunshot wounds. The older victim appears to be Robert Ford, and the younger one, his son Robbie.
They both shared the same name, Robbie, and then Robert's the dad. It's a bloodbath. Something really bad has happened.
The officer immediately called for assistance, homicide, supervisors, all hands on deck. There was no burglary of the home. The door was still locked when law enforcement got there. There was no broken windows, no kicked-in doors.
So investigators start asking themselves, is there something about either of these victims that would cause someone to target them? So they're really looking to who would have a motive to kill them.
Initial background checks show that Robert Marion Ford was born on May 21st, 1959, in Conway, South Carolina.
Robert was a native of the area, lifelong resident. He was very active in his church, very active in the choir.
He was married to a lady named Sheila. Sheila and Robert had a daughter named Samantha.
Samantha was always the apple of his eye. She had a great relationship with her dad. She loved both her parents very much.
The relationship between Robert and Sheila was strained. So they had gotten a divorce. They saw each other from time to time, but it was a very chilled relationship.
Once he and Samantha's mother divorced, Robert quickly married Melda, who was Robbie's mother. So Samantha and Robbie were half siblings. It seemed as though the family was pretty close, pretty well adjusted. Samantha grew up with her mother, but would certainly visit with her father on a regular basis.
Robbie was always the typical annoying kid brother. Not that Samantha ever treated him like she was annoyed with him or anything. She spent time with him. She loved him.
As Samantha and Robbie got older, Robert worked hard to support them.
He had been a very hard worker, studiously saving money so that he could provide for his children.
Robert also invested in his children's spiritual growth.
He played leadership roles in the church. He was a constant member of the choir, and he went several times a week. So everyone in the community knew Robert, and they all knew Samantha. They all knew Robbie.
But Robert's devotion to the church was challenged when 21-year-old Samantha came to him with some difficult news.
She got pregnant out of wedlock. He wasn't happy about the situation, but he didn't fault her. But the church frowned upon it, even though she has been involved in the church her entire life. Her father had to step down as deacon because she's an unwed mother.
To Robert, the decision was simple. When Samantha gave birth to her daughter, he was there for her, despite the scandal it caused in the congregation.
He had a grandchild, so in ways their relationship was strengthened.
He was an amazing grandfather. He loved his kids. He's Pappy.
Within a few years, Samantha gave birth to twin boys. But her relationship with the children's father didn't last. However, when she met and married a man who worked at the nearby detention center, Samantha found the stability her children needed.
He had adopted her 3 biological children that she had from someone else. Samantha maybe did some work here or there, but nothing steady.
She was always involved with her children. She stayed at home a lot with the kids.
While Samantha settled into family life, Robbie was building a life of his own.
Robbie was also very highly thought of. He had been in school at Clemson studying for an architecture degree and seemed at least on the path to a good career.
He had a good relationship with his niece and nephews. Still had a really good relationship with Samantha. They talked regularly.
But in 2016, the family faced heartbreak when Robert's wife Melda suddenly died. Over the next 2 years, Robbie and Samantha became his support system as he dealt with the grief.
It was just Robbie and Robert living at the home when Robbie was not in college.
There were quite a number of text messages. They would spend time with each other, visit with each other. So at first blush, the family certainly seemed very close.
But on the evening of August 18th, 2018, both Robert and Robbie have been found shot to death outside their home. Shortly after the discovery, Detective Peter Sester arrives to begin an investigation.
We've got a young male. He has what appears to be a gunshot wound in his upper right shoulder and a gunshot wound to the back of the head. The second victim, and that would be Robbie's father, Robert Ford. His gunshot wound is a contact wound under the chin. They had some to-go cups with them, maybe some leftover food or something in a bag with them. So they are just peacefully coming in. You begin to think, okay, Robert Ford had to have been shot first because there is no indication of a struggle. That tells me the suspect's standing right there and waiting for them. Robbie Ford is probably attempting to flee from the back of the house when he's shot more than likely in the upper right shoulder first. That puts him to the ground. The second shot is then the suspect coming up behind him and shooting him in the back of the head. At close range, you could see that blood is coagulating. It's beginning to turn darker. I've got to assume it's probably anywhere from 6 to 12 hours earlier that this occurred. Both of the wallets were gone. One of the cars is in the driveway, and obviously the other vehicle that's in the farming field belongs to this residence.
A robbery attempt seems possible, but a search of the home quickly dismisses that theory.
The neighbors were probably about 2 football fields away. This seemed to be a targeted attack in part because someone went specifically to that location in a very rural area. That suggests that they had some knowledge of who lived there or what they might find there.
Both of these two individuals are quiet, law-abiding citizens. The father is a good church-going man, and Robbie's looking forward to going off to school in Charleston. The fact that the father is shot up close and personal, you can't help but think this is a close friend or a relative that's behind this murder.
The initial questions would be, do they have any enemies? Who would want to do this? Who gains from their death?
Coming up, detectives get a lead from something the killer left behind.
Cigarette butts are a perfect source of DNA.
And an insight into the killer's mindset is revealed.
A mask shows that this was not spur of the moment. This was planned out.
To South Carolina police, the murders of 59-year-old Robert Ford and his 25-year-old son Robbie Ford appear to be the result of a targeted attack. But it seems the killer tried to make it look otherwise.
Their wallets were missing. Robbie's vehicle was missing. But it looks like a homicide made to look like a robbery gone bad.
This crime appears to be committed solely on these two individuals. That's telling us that we need to be looking for somebody that may be closely connected to these victims.
News of something happening at the Ford home gets back to loved ones quickly.
Samantha did show up at the scene. It's my understanding that people had called to tell her there was a law enforcement presence at her father and brother's house.
She approached law enforcement. They told her your father and half-brother had been killed.
She seemed pretty shocked about the whole incident. Kind of a normal reaction you would expect from a daughter.
They began asking, when's the last time you heard from them? Do you know what they had been doing recently? And Samantha told investigators that Robert and Robbie had been down in Charleston looking for an apartment for Robbie, who was going to be spending a semester of school down there.
She had communicated with them the night before and knew that they would be arriving back on Saturday.
She described her relationship with her father as an excellent relationship. They were very close. She would go and clean his house, bring them meals. She could not think of anyone who would want to harm either her father or her brother.
According to Samantha, the only trouble her father had in the recent past is a break-in.
The house had been burglarized back in 2017, and several items had been taken from the house at that time.
During that burglary, a .38 revolver was stolen, some jewelry, and a laptop.
To investigators, it seems unlikely the burglars would return a year later and not steal anything. They leave Samantha to grieve and make arrangements to follow up with her.
They canvassed the neighborhood and they went to one of the closest neighbors who was kind of across the field. The night before, around 8:45, that neighbor was outside in his yard and heard a gunshot, followed by a scream and another gunshot. He didn't report that to the police at the time because in that area of our county, hearing gunshots is not particularly unusual.
The timing corresponds to what Samantha told investigators. Detective Sestaire directs his attention to the soybean field where Robert's car was abandoned.
This is significant because whoever brought that vehicle there decided that they were going to try and destroy evidence by setting the vehicle on fire. I arrive on scene. You're looking for any type of evidence. I find nothing until I get within about 5 to 10 feet of the vehicle. And just outside the driver's door of the vehicle on the ground, there are 3 cigarette butts that are smoked down almost to the filter. The minute I open the car, I can smell a flammable liquid, gasoline or something of that nature. I also see inside the vehicle, and I think is significant, is on the driver's side floor, there's like a wool ski cap.
When people set out to burn a car, they don't realize that the car has to have a lot of oxygen to continue the burn.
The killer, he didn't roll any windows down or crack a window, so the fire quickly smothered.
Detective Sestaire collects the pieces of evidence and reseals the car to preserve the crime scene.
Cigarette butts are a perfect source of DNA. Skin cells, saliva from your mouth is on the filters of those cigarettes. So that's going to definitely yield a significant profile for us on who our killer may be.
While the crime lab begins analysis of the DNA samples, investigators consider the other evidence left behind.
A mass shows that this was not spur of the moment. This was planned out.
With the investigation underway, the shocking news spreads across the small community.
Robert Ford's family was horrified that he had been murdered and really wanted some justice.
Samantha was completely devastated. She didn't even know, up from down at that moment. They told her they couldn't rule her out at that point. We just assumed that was typical protocol.
But when investigators contact Samantha to give a statement, she provides an airtight alibi.
There was a convenience store that showed Samantha on surveillance video during the time of the murders. The investigators also got Samantha's phone records. There was no evidence that her phone was using a cell tower near her father's home.
A few weeks later, the DNA samples collected from the burned vehicle provide detectives with a possible new lead.
The State Law Enforcement Division, SLED, determines that both the cigarette butts and the skull cap had the same single source DNA profile. That's like gold in an investigation because it's one person.
I vividly remember there was celebration. We don't know everything, but we fully expected the killer to be in CODIS.
It's been 30 days since the murders of Robert and Robbie Ford, and Horry County investigators have just gotten a huge break in the case.
The DNA profile is that of a white male. We're excited. We're thinking the minute they load that thing into CODIS, we're going to get a hit. You know, this person's got to be in there.
Unfortunately, CODIS did not come back with what we call a hit, so it didn't lead anywhere at that point.
But we now have that it is a white male.
Experts suggest detectives send the samples to a company specializing in ancestral DNA.
You can't DNA everybody. It's a violation of people's privacy. But we'll pay ourselves to send our DNA into 23andMe and all these other companies. Well, the one thing they don't tell you when you sent your DNA off through the mail is through forensic genealogy, law enforcement can have access to it.
That takes time. It was a lot of hard investigative work that went into this, patience, and the longer it takes you, the fear of memories, of evidence, of things happening to people that they're not going to be around later on.
As the months pass, Samantha Rabon moves on with her life.
I had gone to her home, which was formerly her father's home. Her and her husband and her kids moved into it.
Samantha Rabon acted pretty quickly in laying claim to Robert's assets and to any money that was available to her. And I think that certainly got investigators' attention, that she was behaving so quickly. Police found out from Robert Ford's sister that he had insurance policies and that Samantha Rabon was the beneficiary of those policies. But Robbie was actually the primary beneficiary.
Robert had a lot of insurance, and he had a lot of land. So if anything were to happen to Robert, Robbie would get that money.
I know that afterwards she was obtaining money from various insurance policies after her dad and brother had been murdered, and she was renovating her home. So she was benefiting from her father and brother's death for sure.
In August 2020, 2 years after the murders, the DNA lab contacts detectives.
They come back with a partial match. Our suspect has 2 other brothers, and that's great information. And they're both incarcerated, so their DNA was collected in jail. Problem is, they weren't out of jail, so it's definitely not them. But from that, we then develop a potential suspect, and that's Randy Granger. Turns out that he has a criminal history. He had been in prison for, I believe, about 15 years.
Data obtained from the cell tower near the burned vehicle puts Randy in the area when the crime took place.
They discovered a phone number associated with Randy Granger as making a phone call to somebody else on this night. And that phone number came back to a woman named Teresa Martin. Randy Granger and Teresa Martin were dating, boyfriend and girlfriend. Teresa Martin, once investigators start looking into her, is discovered to be a distant relative of Samantha Rabon's mother. She is a cousin. Of course, it raises eyebrows that Randy Granger, whose DNA is at the soybean field, is calling the cousin of Samantha Rabon on the night that her father and her brother have been murdered.
Coming up, a co-conspirator makes a confession.
When he was done with the job, she gave him $20,000.
And exposes the puppet master.
He said that he was hired
To do what?
to kill her daddy.
Nearly 2 years after Robert Ford and his son Robbie Ford were found murdered, South Carolina police interview 2 new suspects. A relative of Samantha Rabon, Teresa Martin, and Teresa's boyfriend, 50-year-old Randy Granger.
They're brought in and placed in separate rooms and questioned.
We know he was involved. So even at that point, we've got to get a story as to why this happened. Going into it, it's like, what is your connection with these 2?
Randy is confronted with photos of the burned vehicle and items containing his DNA.
Mr. Randy, do you have any idea why you're here? No? What's that?
It's a Ford Escape.
You ain't never seen it? You ain't never seen it before? No. Okay.
It's a cigarette butt. With DNA on it. And it was left right beside the car.
Randy wouldn't say anything about anything.
I know you didn't do this by yourself. What I want is the person who asked you to do it. Do what? You really want to play stupid? I'm serious now. Because I got you right now for at least 2 counts of murder. Arson. You need a lawyer, I guess.
Hitting a brick wall with Randy, detectives hope Teresa will give them more.
Just because you know something doesn't mean you're involved in it. Doesn't mean you can be in trouble for it. But by lying to us, that's where a problem comes. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
At first, Teresa sidesteps their questions about Randy, but she eventually admits he called her to pick him up on the day of the murders.
And what did he say?
Nothing. He just got in the car and he said, let's go home.
As police continued to interview her, she engaged in what we call progressive truth-telling. She kept giving them just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more.
He said that he was hired to do a job.
And he said, who hired him?
He said Samantha.
To do what?
To kill her daddy.
Okay.
About a week before the murders, Teresa says she overheard Randy and Samantha discussing the plan.
She told him that she, like I said, she had a job for him to do, and I wanted to take care of my daddy and my brother. When he was done with the job, she'd give him $20,000. And she wanted it done before he left to go to college, because she knew if her daddy got killed, then she would have to split everything.
Robbie was actually the primary beneficiary, so it wouldn't have done Samantha much good to kill her father if her brother didn't die at the same time.
Then she is the sole beneficiary of all assets. Those assets include pension plans, life insurance, lots of acreage that her father's home was on, including the home, all these assets up to almost $1 million.
So how did he get to Robert's house?
Well, I took him and dropped him off. He told me that he got the gun from Samantha. He said he's gonna wait in the woods until they come home.
You remember what time?
It wasn't dark yet.
There was a text message from Teresa Martin to Samantha Rabon, "I'm home alone." They confronted her with that. At first, she denied that it meant anything. Eventually, she said, yes, that was sort of our code, that I had dropped Randy off.
The interview gives detectives what they need to secure an arrest warrant for Samantha. She is immediately arrested at her mother's residence.
They actually timed Samantha's arrest for the 2-year anniversary of the murders. Samantha Rabon was initially charged with murder and criminal conspiracy.
News of the alleged murder plot stuns everyone in the community.
I heard all these rumors, but I took it with a grain of salt because it didn't sound right to me. This is not the young lady that I've grown to know.
I was in complete shock when they arrested her. How could they possibly think that she had done this?
Once Samantha's arrested, she doesn't talk. She doesn't claim to be involved in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
Before I ask you any questions, just want you to know, I already talked to Randy. And Randy's in jail. Okay? Do you want to talk to us?
No. So now does my lawyer come here? Like, what happened to them?
Now with a warrant, police obtain Samantha's cell phone. Investigators turn it over to a detective who specializes in electronic crimes.
I deal with anything that has digital evidence. I got the cell phone. I began using keyword searches and searching for insurance. I began murder and different search criterias to go through the device.
Some of the more interesting web searches were how quickly you can clean up a double homicide. How quickly can you get a passport?
There were other searches. Does God forgive murderers? Can you be a suspect in a murder and never get charged?
There is a lot of real damning search history that really feeds in to the fact that she has played a significant role in the death of her father and her brother.
After 2 years of investigation, Samantha Rabon has been charged with plotting a murder for hire to get rid of her father and brother. Once the case is handed over to prosecutors, they focus on getting Samantha's co-conspirators to turn against her.
Teresa Martin had basically admitted some of her involvement, and she quickly agreed to cooperate. Randy Granger would not, so I determined that it was easier to try him first.
On April 3rd, 2023, Teresa pleads guilty to being an accessory.
Teresa Martin never goes to trial, takes a plea, and agrees to testify in both Randy and Samantha Rabon's trials.
The same day she takes a plea, she provides witness testimony at Randy's trial.
The police get what we call a buccal swab, a known DNA standard from him. That DNA standard is sent to SLED, and SLED is able to say, yes, that DNA standard matches the single source DNA profile from the cigarette butts and the ski cap at the scene.
Randy Granger is found guilty and sentenced to 2 life terms for the murder of Robert and Robbie Ford.
After his conviction of 2 counts of murder, arson, and other charges, Randy has a change of heart.
Randy, at that point, agreed to testify against Samantha Rabon.
According to Randy, Samantha's relationships with her father and brother weren't as rosy as police had been led to believe.
Samantha was the child of a previous marriage, whereas Robbie had grown up with both of his parents in the same home. So I think there was a little bit of tension there because Robbie may have been perceived as being the favored child in the family dynamic.
There was talk about Samantha being unhappy about Robbie maybe getting a little more inheritance than she did.
Randy says Samantha approached him at her mother's house with a plan to profit off their deaths.
Randy Granger said that Samantha Rabon gave him the gun that day on the porch. She said that they both had to die at the same time, and she offered him $20,000 to commit that murder.
About a week later, Randy and Teresa executed the plan.
Teresa Martin dropped Randy off at Robert and Robbie Ford's home. Randy Granger waited hours and hours and smoked cigarettes while he was waiting for them to come home. He knew that they were going to be at dinner. He just didn't know exactly when they would get home.
Around 8:45 p.m., he heard tires on the gravel driveway.
Robert got out of the passenger side of Robbie's car first and was walking to go up the back steps to his home. And he shot Robert Ford in the face. Randy says he hears Robbie scream, and he is running, and so he shoots Robbie in the back. And then he goes over and shoots Robbie in the back of the head. He walks back over to Robert and shoots him under his chin. And he takes their wallets, and he takes the keys to the Ford Escape that was Robbie's. And he drives it to a field, and he attempts to burn it.
Once the car was on fire, Randy called Teresa to pick him up. But he'd made a few crucial mistakes.
He had smoked basically a pack of cigarettes, and then he put the cigarettes in his socks to keep from leaving evidence there.
He didn't realize that his socks had rolled down and the cigarettes he'd been stashing from Robert's house had fallen outside the car onto the ground. And he thought that the skull cap would have burned up, but they didn't.
The intent was to completely destroy the vehicle. He just neglected to leave a window open to allow oxygen to get into it.
After the double homicide, Randy found out it was all for nothing.
He never received $20,000 from Samantha Rabon. Randy was upset at first, but you can't call the police.
With Randy and Teresa's help, prosecutors believe they have enough to convict Samantha. But they know when it comes to juries, a guilty verdict is never certain.
I think the strongest thing that we had going for us was a clear motive. But anytime you are dependent on a testifying co-defendant, you always worry because it's very easy cross-examination for the defense attorney. Well, you're doing this to get a better deal. They have a built-in motive to fabricate. So there was a lot of pressure on us to get the right result.
On February 21st, 2024, Samantha Rabon stands trial for the murders of her family members, Robert and Robbie Ford.
It was a full 6 years after we discovered that gruesome scene off Highway 19, so way past due.
For Samantha's trial, the whole victim side of the courtroom was packed with family, with friends. There were still some supporters for Samantha Rabon on her side, including her husband and some other family members.
Prosecutors rely heavily on Randy Granger's testimony.
I will say I thought Randy's testimony was extremely effective. It had a ring of truth to it that you couldn't deny.
They argue the burglary at the Ford home, during which the murder weapon was stolen, is evidence of premeditation.
It does seem that Samantha Rabon was certainly responsible for that burglary, which shows us that she had been thinking about having her father killed and her brother killed for at least a year before and was actually going to use her father's own gun to do it.
Samantha finally reached a breaking point. Her income was not meeting her outgo, and I think she snapped because there was a solution And that solution to make her a millionaire was going to cost her her dad and her brother.
Samantha's defense team attempts to undermine Randy's credibility.
The defense, of course, is going to paint a cooperating state's witness, a man that admits to pulling the trigger, as not to be trusted.
Randy Granger did tell us what he had done with the gun. He said that he threw it into sort of a creek running along a road, but we were never able to find the gun.
Samantha Rabon was adamant that she didn't do it, and that just because she benefited, I'm sure she probably thought that doesn't mean I'm a murderer.
On February 28, 2024, after 2 hours, the jury reaches a decision.
When he said that she was guilty, inside I was screaming and crying and having a complete breakdown.
She was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole and was taken away that day.
I still don't understand. I'm just still so overwhelmed and lost in the feeling of there's no true factual evidence that I can see.
100% justice was served. She is the one that set this plan in motion, and she is where she belongs.
Although the gunman, Randy Granger, helped prosecutors convict Samantha, he doesn't fare much better.
The state filed a motion asking a judge to allow him to be resentenced, but the judge only turned it from 2 consecutive life terms to 2 concurrent life terms, so not much of a break for him in the end.
I know there was a huge sense of relief for Robert's family and for that community where Robert lived. He was extremely active in his church and had a lot of friends out there, and I think they were relieved to finally see some justice in this case.
Who would want to think that anyone in their family would have the ability to draft up a plan like this, to have somebody executed simply over money? Samantha felt she needed it all. Greed got the better end of her.
In the tranquil expanse of Horry County, South Carolina, a place often characterized by its serene farmlands and tightly knit communities, a heinous act of violence ripped through the calm on a summer evening. The sun had barely set, its last embers fading over fields heavy with soybean, when the quiet solitude of a rural home was shattered, leaving behind a scene that would profoundly shake the very foundations of trust and expose a betrayal of the deepest kind. It began with an abandoned vehicle, shrouded in mystery and the acrid stench of burnt accelerant, signaling an unfolding tragedy that would lead investigators down a labyrinthine path of deceit and calculated malevolence. On August 18, 2018, just moments before the noon hour, local police were summoned to an unusual sight in a sprawling soybean field in Horry County. An automobile, inexplicably situated amidst the agricultural expanse, immediately drew suspicion. It was out of place, a stark anomaly against the natural backdrop, suggesting something profoundly amiss. The vehicle, a burned-out husk, presented a silent testament to a failed attempt at eradication, its metal shell warped, its interior a charcoal canvas of destruction. The initial officer, trained to observe and interpret the silent language of a crime scene, noted the soot-covered windows, evidence of an internal conflagration that had consumed oxygen before its intended obliteration could be completed. Cautiously, the officer approached, the metallic scent of burnt vehicle components mingling with something far more unsettling, the faint yet unmistakable aroma of a flammable liquid, possibly gasoline. A swift inspection confirmed the absence of any occupants, though the intention behind the burning was unmistakably sinister. The license plate, miraculously intact amidst the char, offered a crucial first thread in the unraveling tapestry of this emerging crime. A quick query through dispatch identified the owner, a Mr. Robbie Ford. The address associated with Robbie Ford led authorities approximately 15 to 17 miles away to a quiet residence nestled in the heart of rural Conway, a home also belonging to his father, Robert Ford. This was a sector of Horry County, renowned for its family farms and sparse population, where neighbors might be separated by 2 football fields or more, a landscape that inherently suggested a measure of peace and security. Upon arrival, the patrol officer, guided by the urgent need to make contact with the registered owner, first knocked on the front door. There was no answer. A sense of foreboding, a quiet dread, began to settle. The officer then proceeded to circumnavigate the house, following standard procedure, hoping to find an alternate entrance or perhaps someone in the rear. It was then, in a moment that would forever be etched into the memory of that day, that a horrifying tableau presented itself. To the officer's right, amidst the verdant embrace of the yard, lay the motionless form of a male figure, positioned tragically close to the back door. A second body, also male, was discovered nearby on the grassy expanse. Life-saving checks were quickly initiated, but the grim reality was undeniable. Both individuals were deceased, victims of apparent gunshot wounds. The older man was soon identified as Robert Ford, and the younger, his son, Robbie Ford. The scene was, in the stark lexicon of law enforcement, a bloodbath, a brutal disruption of domestic serenity, leaving an indelible stain on the idyllic rural landscape. The immediate call for assistance resonated with an urgent gravity, summoning homicide investigators and supervisors, signifying an all-hands-on-deck response to a tragedy of profound magnitude. The initial examination of the home itself presented a peculiar contradiction to the violent deaths discovered outside. The front door remained steadfastly locked. No windows were shattered, no doors violently forced open. The lack of any apparent forced entry immediately challenged the facile assumption of a robbery gone awry, steering detectives toward a more chilling conclusion. This was no random act. This implied either intimate knowledge of the victims or a carefully orchestrated scenario designed to mislead. Investigators began to meticulously construct a profile of the victims, seeking any aspect of their lives that might provoke such a targeted and extreme act of aggression. Who would harbor etouge hot animosity? Who stood to gain from their sudden demise? These fundamental questions became the compass for the nascent investigation. Robert Marion Ford, born on May 21, 1959, was a lifelong resident of Conway, deeply embedded in the fabric of his community. His life revolved around his family, his work ethic, and his unwavering devotion to his church, where he was a constant presence in the choir, actively participating in spiritual leadership roles several times a week. This deep community involvement meant Robert was a well-known and respected figure. His personal life, however, held a touch more complexity. Robert had been married to Sheila, with whom he shared a daughter, Samantha. Samantha was undeniably the apple of her father's eye, a bond characterized by profound love and closeness. The relationship between Robert and Sheila eventually fractured, leading to a divorce, which subsequently led to a more distant, though still civil, interaction. Robert later married Melda, who became Robbie's mother. This familial structure meant Samantha and Robbie were half-siblings, yet their bond, despite the common perceived challenges of blended families, appeared robust and affectionate. Samantha, who primarily resided with her mother, consistently maintained a warm and regular connection with her father. Robbie, as is often the case with younger siblings, sometimes played the role of the typical annoying younger brother, but never did Samantha reciprocate with actual annoyance, instead showing him affection and care. The family, outwardly at least, projected an image of closeness and functional harmony. As the years unfolded, Robert remained a diligent provider, working assiduously and saving judiciously to secure a promising future for his children. His commitment extended beyond material provisions. He was equally invested in their spiritual development, a principle evident in his active church participation. The community universally recognized Robert's commitment and knew his children, Samantha and Robbie, intimately through their shared experiences within the church. However, even steadfast devotion can be tested. At the tender age of 21, Samantha presented her father Vekep to hot news that, while deeply personal, carried significant social implications within their conservative Christian community. She was pregnant outside of wedlock. While Robert, displaying paternal empathy and unconditional love, did not fault his daughter, the church community held different standards. The repercussions rippled beyond Samantha, touching Robert directly, forcing him to step down from his esteemed position as a deacon. To Robert, the decision was simple, a testament to his values overriding external pressures. When Samantha's daughter was born, he was a devoted grandfather, strengthening their already deep bond, making him an amazing and joyful presence in his grandchild's life. His family was his sanctuary, his love for his children and grandchildren boundless. Within a few years, Samantha welcomed twin boys into the world. Her relationship with their father, however, did not endure. It was through her eventual marriage to a man working at a nearby detention center that Samantha found the stability she sought, her husband adopting all three of her biological children. Samantha embraced the role of a devoted mother, her primary focus centered on raising her children, performing occasional work but largely remaining at home. Meanwhile, Robbie was charting his own course, a promising future shimmering before him. He was a student at Clemson, pursuing a degree in architecture, a path that suggested a bright and stable career. He too nurtured a strong bond Vekep Tehat. His niece and nephews, and his relationship with Samantha remained consistently close, marked by regular conversations and shared moments. However, tragedy struck the family again in 2016 when Melda, Robert's wife and Robbie's mother, passed away unexpectedly. In the 2 years that followed, Robbie and Samantha became Robert's unwavering pillars of support, navigating the turbulent waters of grief together. During the periods when Robbie was not away at college, it was just he and Robert at the home, their lives intertwined, punctuated by frequent visits, and an exchange of text messages that painted a picture of mutual reliance and affection. From a superficial glance, the Ford family embodied a picture of closeness and familial warmth. Yet, it was into this seeming harmony that the cruel hand of violence had descended on August 18, 2018, leaving both Robert and Robbie lifeless outside their home. Detective Peter Sestare, an experienced investigator, arrived at the scene shortly after the grim discovery. Stepping into a meticulously maintained rural yard, transformed into a chilling tableau of death. His eyes, trained to absorb every detail, quickly registered the devastating injuries. Robbie, the younger victim, bore what appeared to be a gunshot wound to his upper right shoulder and a fatal shot to the back of his head. Robert, his father, exhibited a contact wound beneath his chin, a horrifyingly intimate act of violence. Nearby, investigators noted ordinary remnants of a peaceful evening, to-go cups and a bag that likely contained leftover food, suggesting the victims were merely returning home, unsuspecting and unwary. The lack of a struggle, the undisturbed appearance of Robert, led Detective Sestare to a somber initial hypothesis. Robert Ford had likely been shot first, ambushed at close range. This implied a killer lying in wait, poised to strike. Robbie, in a desperate attempt to flee or perhaps understand what was happening, was likely shot first in the shoulder, a wound designed to incapacitate, before a final, brutal shot to the back of his head silenced him forever. The coagulating blood, already beginning to darken under the late summer sun, suggested the murders had occurred anywhere from 6 to 12 hours prior, placing the approximate time of death within the previous evening or very early morning. Both victims' wallets were missing, and one of their vehicles was conspicuously absent from the driveway, matching the description of the burned-out car found miles away in the soybean field. The disappearance of these items initially hinted at a robbery, but the secure state of the house, with its locked doors and unbroken windows, contradicted this narrative, quickly dismantling the superficial appearance of a burglary. The targeted nature of the attack was evident. Someone had deliberately journeyed to this remote location. Ve-kep, tehat, precise intent, suggesting an intimate knowledge of the victims and their routines. These were quiet, law-abiding citizens. Robert, a dedicated churchgoer, and Robbie, a promising college student on the cusp of a bright future. The close-range nature of Robert S.'s gunshot wound further cemented the chilling thought that the perpetrator was someone known, perhaps a friend or even a relative. The immediate questions posed by the investigating team probed the depths of their lives. Did they have enemies? Who would possess such a powerful motive for their annihilation? And critically, who stood to truly benefit from their tragic and violent end? The investigation, already complex, had only just begun to uncover its many layers. As the early hours of the investigation unfolded, the urgency to find leads was palpable. Detectives were keenly aware that in targeted attacks, the smallest detail could crack the fade of deception. One critical aspect, the abandoned and torched vehicle, became a focal point. Whoever took that car intended to destroy evidence, to erase their presence. Detective Sestare meticulously examined the scene around the burned vehicle, seeking anything that the perpetrator, in their haste or overconfidence, might have overlooked. The scorched remains of the car told a story of a fire that had sputtered and died, suffocated by the very lack of oxygen, an amateurish attempt at total annihilation. And there, near the driver's side door, within 10 feet of the vehicle, lay 3 discarded cigarette butts, smoked almost to the filter, a silent offering of skin cells and saliva. This was, as any seasoned detective knows, investigative gold. Furthermore, inside the vehicle, amidst the soot and ash, a wool ski cap was discovered on the driver's side floor. These items, seemingly innocuous discards, carried the biological signature of the perpetrator, promising a pathway to their identity. The mask, in this case a ski cap, also suggested premeditation. This was not a spontaneous act born of rage, but a cold, calculated plan. The shocking news of the Ford's murders traveled rapidly through the close-knit community, reaching loved ones with devastating speed. Samantha, informed by frantic phone calls about the ominous law enforcement presence at her father's house, hurried to the scene. The moment she arrived, she was met with the crushing confirmation from officers. Her father and half-brother had been senselessly killed. Her reaction, as observers noted, appeared to be one of profound shock and devastation. a sorrowful expression one would naturally expect from a daughter, hearing such unthinkable news. Detectives, following protocol and searching for immediate information, gently questioned her about her last contacts with Robert and Robbie. Samantha recounted that they had been in Charleston, helping Robbie search for an apartment for an upcoming semester of school. She had last communicated with them the evening before the murders, knowing they were due back on that fateful Saturday. Her relationship with her father, she asserted, was excellent. They were exceptionally close. She often cleaned his home and brought him meals, embodying the role of a loving and attentive daughter. When pressed about potential adversaries, Samantha adamantly stated she could conceive of no one who would keep in a hat harm upon either her father or her brother. The only past trouble Robert had experienced, she recalled, was a burglary at his home in 2017, where a .38 revolver, some jewelry, and a laptop had been stolen. However, the current crime scene yielded no further missing items beyond the wallets and Robbie's car, making a connection to the earlier burglary tenuous at best. It seemed highly improbable that the burglars would return a year later for no discernible gain beyond the initial murder weapon. After obtaining Samantha's initial statement, investigators allowed her to depart, extending the space necessary for grief, while making plans for a more detailed follow-up. In the course of their canvassing, detectives interviewed a neighbor residing approximately 2 football fields away from the Ford residence. This individual recounted hearing a single gunshot, followed by a chilling scream, and then another gunshot around 8:45 the previous evening. They hadn't reported it at the time, as gunshots were not an uncommon sound in their rural environment. However, the timing of these sounds resonated profoundly with Samantha's account, adding a layer of temporal precision to the unfolding mystery. Detective Sesteria's focus returned to the abandoned vehicle in the soybean field, recognizing its pivotal role not merely as a disposal point, but as a deliberate attempt to erase the perpetrator's presence, an act indicative of calculated malice. The retrieved cigarette butts and the wool ski cap, carefully preserved and sent for forensic analysis, were a beacon of hope. The belief was strong. These silent pieces of evidence would yield the DNA of the killer, offering the first tangible link to their identity. The days following the discovery were a blur of intense activity for the Horry County investigators. The anticipation surrounding the DNA analysis was palpable, a quiet hum of expectation beneath the surface of the meticulous casework. Forensic scientists at the State Law Enforcement Division, or SLED, diligently processed the cigarette butts and the ski cap, extracting what was known as a single-source DNA profile. This was the holy grail of forensic evidence. Unambiguous, pointing to one individual, providing undeniable proof of presence. The news ignited a wave of relief and cautious celebration amongst the investigating team. The belief was firm that a direct hit would be found in CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, which houses a national database of DNA profiles from convicted offenders. It had been 30 arduous days since the discovery of Robert and Robbie Ford's lifeless bodies, a month of unwavering dedication, and this breakthrough felt monumental. The profile confirmed a white male perpetrator, narrowing the search, sharpening the focus. Hope soared, only to meet an unexpected, disheartening setback. CODIS yielded no match. The killer, it appeared, was not in the system, a free individual whose genetic fingerprint had yet to be catalogued. The immediate exhilaration gave way to a renewed sense of challenge, but the crucial piece of information, the white male DNA profile, remained an invaluable asset. Faced with the CODIS dead end, Experts suggested exploring the emerging field of ancestral DNA, a relatively new frontier in forensic science that involved sending samples to commercial genealogy companies for familial matching. This process, while ethically complex due to privacy concerns and the voluntary submission of personal DNA by millions, offered a novel avenue when traditional databases fell short. It was a painstaking and time-consuming endeavor, fraught with the anxieties of fading memories, deteriorating evidence, and the relentless march of time that can erase leads. Months bled into a year, then another, as the laborious process of forensic genealogy slowly, meticulously worked to construct a familial tree from the fragments of genetic code. The fear of cold case status, the specter of justice denied, weighed heavily on the investigators. During this period of anxious waiting, Samantha Rabon, the devastated daughter, moved forward with a striking swiftness that began to raise quiet yet persistent questions. She, her husband, and children transitioned into her late father's home, a move that, while seemingly practical, coincided with a rapid acquisition of Robert's assets and available funds. This behavior, the seemingly unseemly haste in claiming inheritances and insurance policies, drew the attention of detectives, fostering a sense of unease. Further inquiries revealed that Robert Ford had held substantial insurance policies. While Samantha was a named beneficiary, the primary beneficiary was in fact Robbie. This crucial detail illuminated a potential, disturbing motive. If Robert were to die, Robbie would inherit a significant portion of the money and extensive land holdings. However, if both Robert and Robbie were no longer living, Samantha would then become the sole beneficiary of these assets, a sum estimated to be close to $1 million, encompassing pension plans, life insurance, and valuable acreage. Evidence quickly emerged that Samantha was indeed benefiting financially, using funds from the various insurance policies for home renovations, a clear and tangible gain from the untimely and violent deaths of her father and brother. These observations, subtle at first, began to coalesce into a disturbing pattern, hinting at a darker undercurrent beneath the surface of the grieving daughter. 2 years after the horrifying double murder, in August of 2020, a breakthrough emerged from the specialized DNA lab. A partial match had been found, not to the killer directly, but to his familial lineage. The DNA profile indicated the suspect had 2 brothers, a pivotal piece of information. The most astonishing twist: both brothers were incarcerated, their DNA already within the system, but their confinement precluded their direct involvement in the murders. However, this familial link led investigators to a potential suspect: Randy Granger. A background check quickly revealed Randy Granger's extensive criminal history, including a significant 15-year incarceration. The puzzle pieces were beginning to align. Further investigation into Randy Granger's movements on the night of the murders proved even more compelling. Cell tower data placed a phone associated with Randy Granger in the vicinity of the burned vehicle at the precise time the crime took place. This same phone number was found to have made a call to a woman named Teresa Martin that night. Teresa Martin was quickly identified as Randy Granger's girlfriend. But more remarkably, she was a distant cousin of Samantha Rabon's mother. The converging lines of evidence: Randy Granger's DNA at the car scene, his call to Teresa Martin, and Teresa's familial connection to Samantha Rabon, transformed the abstract possibility into a concrete, alarming suspicion. The seemingly random act was increasingly appearing to be part of an elaborate, horrifying plot, with Samantha Rabon now squarely at its chilling center. Nearly 2 years had passed since the brutal murders of Robert and Robbie Ford. And the patient, painstaking work of law enforcement finally culminated in a dramatic series of interviews. Samantha Rabon's relative, Teresa Martin, and her boyfriend, 50-year-old Randy Granger, were brought in for questioning, strategically placed in separate interrogation rooms. The detectives, armed with the mounting circumstantial and forensic evidence, faced Randy Granger first, confident in his involvement but seeking the crucial missing piece: the why and, more importantly, the who. The initial exchange was a stonewall of denials. Randy, confronted with photographs of the charred vehicle and the damning evidence of his DNA from the cigarette butts, feigned ignorance, claiming no knowledge of the car or the items. The seasoned detectives, masters of psychological pressure, pushed harder, challenging his feigned stupidity, pressing him on his deep involvement, and the severe legal ramifications he faced, including multiple murder charges and arson. He remained obstinate, unyielding, clinging to a fragile and transparent facade of innocence. Hitting a conversational brick wall with Randy, investigators shifted their focus to Teresa Martin, hoping her resolve would prove less rigid. Gently, yet firmly, they appealed to her sense of reason, explaining the gravity of withholding information, differentiating between knowledge and direct involvement. Slowly, cautiously, Teresa began to crack, engaging in what law enforcement termed progressive truth-telling, releasing fragments of information, little by little. She admitted that Randy had indeed called her to pick him up on the day of the murders, but initially claimed he said nothing of consequence in the car, simply asking to go home. However, as the interview progressed, the weight of her conscience, or perhaps the fear of deeper legal consequences, compelled her to reveal more. She confessed that Randy had told her he was hired to do a job. And then came the gut-wrenching revelation. He named Samantha as the person who had hired him. The job? To kill her daddy. Teresa then unveiled a more detailed, horrifying blueprint. Approximately 1 week before the murders, she had overheard Randy and Samantha discussing the chilling plan. The motive, laid bare in its naked brutality, was financial. If Robert died, Samantha would share his assets, but crucially, Robbie, as the primary beneficiary, would inherit the largest portion. The insidious logic of the plot required the simultaneous elimination of both father and son. With Robbie gone, Samantha would become the sole beneficiary of all assets, a staggering sum approaching $1 million, including valuable pension plans, life insurance payouts, and the extensive land Robert owned. The method of the ambush was also divulged. Teresa confessed to dropping Randy off near Robert's house. Randy, she stated, had obtained the murder weapon from Samantha herself, confirming the burglary a year prior as an act of premeditation, retrieving the very tool of their destruction from Robert's own home. Randy would then wait, concealed in the woods, for their return. Teresa's narrative was further corroborated by a text message she sent to Samantha that fateful night. Mott met home alone. Initially, Samantha had denied its significance, but under pressure, she admitted it was their code to signal that Randy had been successfully dropped off. This confession provided detectives with the irrefutable evidence they needed. An arrest warrant for Samantha Rabon was immediately secured. In a moment pregnant with dark irony, Samantha was arrested at her mother's residence, precisely 2 years to the day after the brutal murders, a deliberate and poignant timing by law enforcement. She was formally charged with kep-teha murder and criminal conspiracy. The news sent shockwaves through the community, particularly amongst those who knew Samantha as the devastated daughter. Disbelief and confusion rippled through the close-knit Christian community. Many simply could not reconcile the gentle young woman they knew with the chilling orchestrator of such violence. Samantha, upon her arrest, remained steadfast in her denial, offering no admissions of guilt. With a warrant in hand, investigators obtained Samantha's cell phone, turning it over to a detective specializing in electronic crimes. The digital footprint left on her device proved to be a goldmine of incriminating evidence. Employing meticulous keyword searches, the detectives scoured the phone for terms like insurance, murder, and various other combinations. What emerged was a profoundly disturbing record of web searches. Queries such as how quickly you can clean up a double homicide, how quickly can you get a passport, does God forgive murderers, and can you be a suspect in a murder and never get charged, painted a vivid, chilling portrait of premeditation and a conscience grappling with the impending heinous act. This digital trail, a silent witness to her dark planning, unequivocally pointed to Samantha's central, orchestrating role in the deaths of her father and brother. After 2 years of relentless investigation, Samantha Rabon stood accused, her greed and calculating nature laid bare for all to see. Once the formidable case was handed over to prosecutors, their strategy centered on securing the cooperation of Samantha's co-conspirators. Teresa Martin, having already admitted a degree of involvement, quickly agreed to corroborate the detailed account of the murder plot. Randy Granger, however, remained uncooperative, forcing the prosecution's hand. He would be tried first. On April 3, 2023, Teresa Martin entered a guilty plea to the charge of accessory after the fact. Her agreement to testify at both Randy S. and Samantha S. trials was a crucial turning point. On the very same day, she delivered compelling witness testimony at Randy Granger S. trial. A buccal swab, a known DNA sample, was also obtained from Randy. This sample was sent to SLED, where it conclusively matched the single-source DNA profile found on the cigarette butts and the ski cap discovered at the scene. The forensic evidence was incontrovertible. Randy Granger was subsequently found guilty of the murders of Robert and Robbie Ford and sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms. After his conviction, a shift occurred within Randy. Facing a lifetime behind bars, he agreed to testify against Samantha Rabon, a move that promised to unveil even deeper layers of betrayal. His testimony began to dismantle the idealized family narrative, revealing a subcurrent of tension. Samantha, as the child from Robert's previous marriage, was depicted as potentially feeling overshadowed or less favored compared to Robbie, who had grown up vekep, tehat both his parents in the same home. Randy recounted discussions where Samantha expressed unhappiness regarding Robbie potentially inheriting more than her. It was against this backdrop of perceived inequity and burgeoning financial strain that, according to Randy, Samantha approached him at her mother's house with a chilling proposal. She handed him the gun on the porch, stating that both her father and brother needed to die simultaneously, offering him a $20,000 payment for the murders. Approximately a week later, Randy and Teresa put their plan into action. Teresa Martin dropped Randy off at Robert and Robbie Ford's residence. Randy, armed with the gun, waited for hours in the cover of darkness, smoking cigarettes, anticipating their return from dinner. Around 8:45 in the evening, the sound of tires on the gravel driveway announced their arrival. As Robert emerged from the passenger side of Robbie's car, heading towards the back steps of his home, Randy unleashed the first shot, striking Robert Ford in the face. Hearing Robbie scream and attempt to flee, Randy pursued, shooting him in the back, then delivering a final, brutal shot to the back of his head. Returning to Robert, He fired a third shot under his chin. He then callously took their wallets and Robbie's Ford Escape keys, driving the vehicle to the remote field where he attempted to set it ablaze. After the failed arson, Randy contacted Teresa for his getaway. Yet, in his haste and amateurish execution, Randy made crucial errors. He had smoked a pack of cigarettes while waiting, attempting to hide the butts in his socks. Unbeknownst to him, some had fallen out near the car, leaving his DNA behind. The ski cap, too, which he assumed would be destroyed in the fire, remained, providing further incriminating evidence. His intent to completely obliterate the vehicle failed due to his simple oversight of not rolling down a window to provide oxygen for the fire. The ultimate betrayal for Randy? He never received the promised $20,000 from Samantha. Upset, he was, but powerless to seek recourse with law enforcement. The combined detailed testimonies of Randy and Teresa, prosecutors felt they possessed an undeniable case against Samantha. However, the inherent challenges of relying on co-defendants' testimony, who naturally have a built-in motive to cooperate for a better deal, weighed heavily. The defense could easily undermine their credibility. The pressure to secure a just verdict was immense. On February 21, 2024, a full 6 years after the discovery of the gruesome scene, Samantha Rabon's trial commenced. The courtroom, a microcosm of the polarized community, was packed. The victim's side was filled with grieving family and friends, yearning for justice, while Samantha still retained a few supporters, including her husband and other relatives. The prosecution's case leaned heavily on Randy Granger's testimony, which, despite his past, resonated with an undeniable ring of truth, painting a vivid picture of the plot. They meticulously presented evidence of premeditation, arguing that the 2017 burglary, during which the murder weapon was stolen from Robert's own home, was an initial calculated step in Samantha's long-standing plan. The narrative unfolded. Samantha had reached a breaking point, her financial expenditures outpacing her income, her perceived slight regarding the inheritance festering, culminating in a cold, calculating decision that a potential $1 million solution was worth the lives of her father and brother. Samantha had, in essence, chosen greed over familial love, a devastating choice with irreversible consequences. The defense, as anticipated, aimed to discredit Randy Granger, painting him as an unreliable witness, a convicted murderer willing to fabricate to lessen his own sentence. They highlighted the missing murder weapon, which Randy claimed to have discarded in a creek, but which was never recovered, attempting to cast doubt on the thoroughness of the investigation, or Randy's veracity. Samantha, for her part, remained defiant, adamantly maintaining her innocence, suggesting that merely benefiting from the deaths did not equate to being a murderer. On February 28, 2024, after a deliberation lasting only 2 hours, the jury delivered their verdict. Guilty echoed through the courtroom, a sound that brought tears of profound relief and a breakdown of pent-up emotion to the victim's family. A sense of justice finally served. Samantha Rabon was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, led away from the courtroom. On that very day, her denials no longer able to conceal the truth. For the community, the conviction brought a measure of closure. Many still struggled to fully comprehend how someone they had known, someone from within their own community, could orchestrate such a monstrous betrayal, all for the allure of money. It was, they concluded, pure greed that had consumed Samantha, blinding her to every moral and humanistic value. Randy Granger, despite his cooperation, received no significant leniency. the state's motion to resentence him resulted only in his 2 consecutive life terms, being converted to 2 concurrent life terms, a minor distinction in the face of a life behind bars. Justice, in its own solemn way, had prevailed, bringing a palpable sense of relief to Robert S. family and the Horry County community, many of whom had revered Robert for his unwavering faith and kindness. The case served as a profound reminder of the devastating consequences when trust is shattered by avarice, a somber warning that the darkest betrayals can often originate from the most unexpected quarters. From a criminal psychology standpoint, the case of Samantha Rabon offers a chilling study in calculated greed and the slow erosion of moral boundaries. Initially, Samantha appears as the devoted daughter, the apple of her father's eye, maintaining close familial bonds even after her parents' divorce. However, the financial strains of being a mother of 3 with irregular income, combined with the profound impact of Melda's death, which altered the inheritance structure, appear to have slowly fermented a sinister seed of avarice within her. The psychology here is not one of sudden rage, but rather a chillingly cold and persistent calculation. Her initial perceived slight regarding Robbie's primary beneficiary status likely ignited a deep resentment, fueling a sense of entitlement and injustice. This internal narrative allowed her to dehumanize her father and brother in her mind, viewing them not as family, but as obstacles to her financial gain. The concept of premeditation, so critical in legal terms, gains a stark psychological depth when considering the stolen .38 revolver from the 2017 burglary. This was not a spur-of-the-moment act, but rather a year-long contemplation, a deliberate acquisition of the instrument of death, signifying a deep dive into the abyss of depravity long before the fatal shots were fired. It reveals a chilling level of strategic planning, hinting at a compartmentalization of self where the loving daughter could exist alongside the ruthless plotter. The web searches, particularly queries about escaping jurisdiction and divine forgiveness for murder, betray a mind wrestling with the ethical implications and practicalities of her plan, yet ultimately choosing to proceed. This indicates not a lack of conscience, but a conscience suppressed and overwhelmed by the potent lure of a large inheritance. The swift move into her father's home and rapid claiming of assets after the murders also demonstrates a stark lack of remorse or even a superficial attempt at maintaining a veneer of sorrow, exposing the true, chilling extent of her underlying motivation. Her unwavering denial, even after conviction, further suggests a profound psychological defense mechanism, perhaps an inability to fully accept the heinousness of her actions, or a persistent belief in her own cunning despite overwhelming evidence. The role of Randy Granger, the triggerman, also offers psychological insights into complicity. His lengthy criminal history suggests a pre-existing disposition towards illegal acts, a desensitization to legal and moral boundaries. He was, in essence, a ready and willing instrument for Samantha's dark will, perhaps motivated by the allure of a large sum of money and the promise of a future freed from financial hardship. His amateurish execution of the crime, leaving DNA, failing to properly destroy the car, speaks to a certain lack of intellectual sophistication, making him a vulnerable target for Samantha's manipulation. His eventual testimony, while coerced by his own conviction, offers a glimpse into the internal dynamics of criminal partnerships, where trust is ultimately superseded by self-preservation. Teresa Martin, in her role as an accomplice, likely experienced a gradient of culpability and emotional distress. Her progressive truth-telling during interrogations showcases the psychological burden of holding a dark secret, eventually yielding under pressure and the weight of evidence, perhaps motivated by a sense of impending doom for her and her boyfriend, and a desire to unburden herself of the guilt. From a professional detective novelist's perspective, this case presents a compelling, albeit tragic narrative arc of how the seemingly ordinary can harbor the profoundly sinister. The elements are classic: a tight-knit community, a beloved family patriarch, a tragic double murder, and a trail of meticulously laid and poorly executed clues. The early misdirection of the staged robbery, the missing wallets versus the locked doors, serves as a quintessential red herring, a moment where the astute detective must look beyond the obvious. The setting itself, the rural, sparsely populated Horry County, becomes a character in its own right, its isolation offering both opportunity and challenge. The initial lack of immediate witnesses, the commonplace sound of gunshots, allows the crime to initially appear mysterious. However, it is precisely this isolation that eventually makes the targeted nature of the attack so apparent. The discovery of the abandoned car, a flaming pyre meant to consume all evidence, is a dramatic turning point. The minute, almost invisible details, the cigarette butts, the ski cap, elevate forensic science to the hero, showcasing its undeniable power in identifying the unseen perpetrator. The journey from CODIS to ancestral DNA is a masterful plot device, stretching the suspense and demonstrating the relentless, evolving nature of investigative work, pushing boundaries to deliver justice. The internal family dynamics, the divorce, the blended family, the succession of wives, and the favored child narrative all provide rich character motivations and backstories that fuel the unfolding drama. The shift in beneficiary status, from Robbie to Samantha, transforms a potential motive into an undeniable driving force. A monetary prize of near $1 million, twisting familial love into murderous intent. The interrogation scenes Ve Kepate, Hot Randy and Teresa are inherently dramatic, a tense psychological dance between suspect and detective. Teresa's progressive truth-telling builds narrative suspense, parceling out crucial information in carefully measured doses, escalating the tension until the final, shocking revelation of Samantha's puppeteering. The digital forensics, Samantha's desperate, revealing web searches, offer a chilling window into the plotteress mind, a narrative shortcut directly to her conscience and intent, adding an irrefutable layer to her culpability. The 2-year anniversary arrest, a poetic touch, serves as a poignant reminder of the enduring commitment to justice. The trials, the courtroom battles, the clash between Randy's damning testimony and the defense attempts to discredit him, culminating in the jury's swift verdict, provide the cathartic resolution demanded by such a harrowing narrative. It's a story not merely of crime, but of a profound moral failing, a tale where the quest for material wealth tragically extinguishes human empathy and familial bonds. The quiet triumph of the justice system, painstakingly piecing together a mosaic of betrayal, ultimately reinforces the enduring message. No secret, no matter how carefully guarded, can remain hidden forever under the relentless pursuit of truth. The life lessons gleaned from this tragic saga are manifold, serving as potent warnings and inspirations. Firstly, the corrupting power of greed stands as a stark lesson. Samantha Rabon's descent into murder was propelled by an insatiable desire for financial gain, showcasing how material avarice can tragically warp an individual's moral compass, leading them to commit unspeakable acts against their own kin. This case underscores the importance of prioritizing human connection and ethical conduct over the pursuit of wealth, reminding us that true fulfillment lies not in accumulated assets, but in meaningful relationships. Secondly, the profound devastation of betrayal within families is laid bare. The community's shock stemmed from the unthinkable realization that a loved one could orchestrate such a heinous crime. It highlights the vulnerability of trust, especially within intimate family circles, and warns against allowing hidden resentments or financial motives to fester, for they can erode the very foundations of familial bonds. Open communication, empathy, and early resolution of perceived grievances are vital safeguards. Thirdly, this case is a powerful testament to the relentless pursuit of justice by law enforcement. Despite initial roadblocks, such as the absence of the perpetrator's DNA in national databases, investigators demonstrated extraordinary patience and persistence. Their willingness to embrace evolving technologies, like ancestral DNA, even amidst its complexities and lengthy processes, highlights the commitment to solving even the most challenging cases. This serves as an invaluable experience for the police in tracking down culprits faster, by demonstrating the efficacy of broad forensic investigative approaches, including familial and ancestral DNA databases, as supplementary tools when direct hits are elusive. It emphasizes that no stone should be left unturned, and innovative methods should be continuously explored within ethical frameworks. Furthermore, the meticulous attention to seemingly minor details, like the cigarette butts and the ski cap, underscores the importance of comprehensive crime scene processing. Every discarded item, every abandoned trace, holds potential for crucial evidence. Police forces can enhance their speed by training personnel to recognize and preserve even the most unassuming pieces of evidence, coupled with rapid deployment of specialized forensic units to ensure nothing is contaminated or overlooked. The digital forensics aspect, unraveling Samantha's incriminating web searches, also demonstrates the critical role of electronic crime investigation in modern policing. Investing in skilled digital forensic analysts and equipping them with cutting-edge tools can dramatically accelerate the process of establishing motive and intent. Fourthly, the case offers a communal warning. Vigilance and reporting unusual activities, even seemingly minor ones, are essential for collective safety. The neighbor who heard gunshots, but initially dismissed them, serves as a poignant reminder that in quiet communities, even seemingly innocuous sounds can sometimes be early indicators of profound trouble. Fostering strong community police relationships and encouraging citizens to report anything out of the ordinary without fear of bothering authorities can provide critical early leads. The "if you see something, say something" ethos applied to seemingly minor community disturbances can sometimes prevent larger tragedies. Lastly, the narrative, while deeply somber in its events, ultimately champions the triumph of good. The tireless efforts of detectives, prosecutors, and forensic scientists, coupled with the cooperation of key witnesses, culminated in the accountability of those responsible. This inspires a sense of hope and reaffirms the belief in a justice system designed to protect the innocent and punish the guilty, offering a necessary sense of closure and upholding the foundational tenets of humanistic value within society. The story, in its entirety, cautions against the darkness of the human heart, but celebrates the unwavering light of those who strive for justice, reinforcing that even in the face of profound betrayal, accountability can and will prevail. The quiet morning in Horry County, South Carolina, shattered into a tableau of unimaginable horror on a muggy August day in 2018. It was just before noon when police units were dispatched to an unusual scene. A burned-out vehicle, ominously abandoned in the vast expanse of a soybean field. The discovery itself was peculiar, an anomaly in the tranquil rural landscape. This was not a typical roadside breakdown, nor a simple discarded car. The air hung heavy with the acrid scent of char, hinting at something far more sinister than a mere accident. The initial responding officer, navigating the undulating rows of green crops, approached the vehicle with caution. All doors were closed, yet a thick layer of soot obscured the windows from the inside, a chilling sign of deliberate destruction. The moment the officer ventured to open a door, an unmistakable odor wafted out, the sharp, pungent smell of a flammable liquid, gasoline or something akin to it, confirming an attempt to incinerate the car. Inside, no one. The vehicle was empty, save for the telltale evidence of its fiery ordeal. A routine check of the license plate through dispatch unveiled the owner's name, Robbie Ford. The registered address led law enforcement to a secluded residence some 15 to 17 miles distant, in Conway. A home belonging to Mr. Robert Ford, Robbie S. father. An officer was dispatched to the Ford residence, nestled in a particularly rural sector of Horry County, an area predominantly dotted Vey, Kep, Te Hot family farms and sparse habitation. Upon arrival, a series of knocks on the front door yielded no response. The stillness of the rural setting was broken only by the officer's footsteps as he rounded to the back of the house, a standard procedure for unresponsive occupants. What he discovered next plunged the scene into the depths of a nightmare. Lying outside the back door was a male body. Just steps away, on the grassy expanse of the yard, lay another. Both men were tragically deceased, bearing apparent gunshot wounds. The older victim was identified as Robert Ford, aged 59. The younger, his 25-year-old son, Robbie Ford. Both shared the familial name, a testament to their paternal bond. The scene, in the words of an investigating officer, was a bloodbath, conveying the raw brutality that had unfolded. The immediate call for assistance brought in homicide supervisors, crime scene investigators, and a flurry of law enforcement, transforming the once serene farmhouse into a hub of grim activity. As investigators began their initial assessment, a puzzling detail emerged. There was no sign of forced entry. The back door, near where Robert Ford lay, was locked. No shattered windows, no kicked-in doors. The house had not been ransacked. This immediately steered the initial hypothesis away from a conventional burglary. If robbery was the motive, why no entry? Why no extensive ransacking? The absence of a struggle around Robert Ford's body, the serene position indicating he had been caught by surprise, painted a harrowing picture. He had been shot at close range, caught entirely off guard. Robbie, in stark contrast, appeared to have been attempting to flee, struck first in the upper right shoulder, before a final, fatal shot to the back of the head, indicating a deliberate and cold pursuit by the assailant. The bodies, discovered just before noon, exhibited signs of rigor and blood coagulation, suggesting the tragic events had occurred some 6 to 12 hours earlier, likely the previous evening. Wallets belonging to both men were missing. Robbie's vehicle was found torched miles away. This initial veneer of a robbery gone wrong, however, began to fray under the scrutinizing gaze of experienced detectives. The deliberate act of burning the vehicle, miles from the crime scene, coupled with the missing wallets, seemed a carefully constructed ruse designed to mislead investigators, to suggest a random, opportunistic act. Yet, the secure state of the home, the specific targeting of these two individuals, spoke volumes of a planned and personal attack. This was not a random encounter. It was a focused elimination. It led the investigative team down a distinct path. Who would harbor such a deep-seated motive against Robert Ford and his son, Robbie? Who stood to gain from their untimely demise? To answer these questions, detectives delved into the lives of the victims. Robert Marion Ford, born on May 21, 1959, was a lifelong resident of Conway, South Carolina. He was a pillar of his community, deeply committed to his church, an active and cherished member of its choir. His faith a defining aspect of his character. Robert had been married to Sheila, with whom he shared a daughter, Samantha. Samantha, the apple of her father's eye, had a loving bond they kept, tehat both parents. However, Robert's relationship with Sheila had grown strained, culminating in their divorce, leaving behind a chilled relationship between the ex-spouses. Robert swiftly remarried after his divorce, finding a new life partner in Melda, who became Robbie's mother. Thus, Samantha and Robbie were half-siblings, and despite the complexities of their blended family, they seemed to forge a close-knit bond. Samantha had grown up primarily with her mother, but maintained regular visits with her father. Robbie, a younger brother, fit the classic mold of an annoying kid brother, though Samantha's affection for him always shone through. Robert, a diligent and hard-working man, had always prioritized his children's welfare, assiduously saving money to ensure their future. His commitment extended to their spiritual development, holding leadership roles in the church and regularly attending services, making him a recognizable and respected figure throughout the community. Robert's unwavering devotion to his church faced its most profound test when Samantha, at 21, approached him with life-altering news. She was pregnant, out of wedlock, while Robert, in his paternal love, did not fault his daughter. The church community, despite Samantha's lifelong involvement, viewed the situation through a lens of strict adherence to doctrine. The consequences were swift, and for Robert, deeply painful. He had to step down from his position as a deacon. However, for Robert, the choice was simple. His love for his daughter transcending societal judgment. He embraced his role as a grandfather wholeheartedly, his relationship with Samantha strengthened by this shared experience. He was, by all accounts, an amazing, happy, and loving grandfather. A few years later, Samantha welcomed twin boys, expanding her family, though her relationship with the children's father did not endure. Stability eventually found its way into her life when she met and married a man working at a nearby detention center, a man who lovingly adopted all three of her biological children. Samantha embraced her role as a stay-at-home mother, devoting her time to her children, undertaking only intermittent work. Meanwhile, Robbie was charting his own course. Highly regarded, he pursued an architecture degree at Clemson, a path that promised a rewarding career. His relationships, particularly with his niece and nephews, and especially with Samantha, remained strong. They communicated regularly, a testament to their enduring sibling bond. The family was struck by tragedy in 2016 when Melda, Robert's wife, and Robbie's mother suddenly passed away. Over the subsequent 2 years, Robbie and Samantha became Robert's steadfast pillars of support as he navigated the profound grief of losing his beloved wife. In Robbie's periods away from college, it was just he and Robert residing together in the home. Their numerous text messages and regular visits painted a picture of a devoted and deeply interconnected family unit. The serene image of a close-knit family, however, was violently shattered on the evening of August 18, 2018. Both Robert and Robbie were found deceased, shot outside their home. The arriving detective, Peter Sisteri, took in the gruesome details. Robbie, with a gunshot wound to his upper right shoulder and a final devastating shot to the back of the head. Robert Ford, his father, exhibited a contact wound beneath his chin, an intimately delivered shot. Scattered nearby were some takeout cups and a bag with leftover food, suggesting they were returning home peacefully, caught unawares. The grim calculus of the scene led Detective Sester to deduce Robert was shot first, without struggle, implying the assailant was already present, perhaps even waiting. Robbie, it appeared, was then targeted as he attempted to flee. The congealing blood indicated the tragedy had transpired many hours prior to their discovery. The missing wallets, the distant torched car, the seemingly inexplicable lack of forced entry into the home. All these threads converged to paint a picture of a meticulously staged scene designed to throw off investigators. The seclusion of the home, neighbors residing 2 football fields away, further reinforced the notion of a targeted attack. The perpetrator possessed intimate knowledge of the property, the residents, and their routines. These were not men with known enemies, no illicit dealings, no evident reason for such a brutal end. Robert, the upstanding churchman; Robbie, the promising student. The close-range nature of Robert's killing sparked a chilling thought in the minds of the investigators. Could this be someone known to the victims? Perhaps even a friend or relative? The initial questions echoed loudly through the quiet country air. Who stood to gain from their deaths? As the sun rose and set over the devastated Horry County landscape, investigators sought any lead, any scrap of evidence. Their meticulous search around the abandoned vehicle in the soybean field yielded crucial discoveries. Within mere feet of the driver's door, 3 cigarette butts, smoked almost to the filter, lay on the ground. Inside the scorched interior, on the driver's side floor, a wool ski cap. These seemingly innocuous items held immense promise. Cigarette butts are a treasure trove of DNA, containing skin cells and saliva. The ski caps similarly promised a rich genetic profile. These were tangible links to the killer. The mask, the ski cap, further reinforced the conclusion. This was not a crime of passion, but a carefully premeditated act. The killer had arrived prepared, suggesting a cool calculation rather than an impulsive rage. News of the Ford family tragedy spread like wildfire through the tight-knit community. Robert Ford's loved ones were aghast, desperately seeking answers and justice. Samantha Rabon, Robert's daughter, and Robbie's half-sister, appeared at the crime scene. Her arrival prompted by frantic calls from those who had witnessed the growing law enforcement presence. Upon being told of her father and brother's murders, she displayed a profound shock, a reaction consistent with the raw grief of a daughter and sister. Investigators, as part of their standard protocol, interviewed her, inquiring about her last contact with them and their recent activities. Samantha informed them that Robert and Robbie had been in Charleston, assisting Robbie in finding an apartment for an upcoming semester of school. She had communicated with them the previous night, expecting their return on Saturday. She described her relationship with her father as excellent, emphasizing their closeness, how she would clean his house and bring him meals. She expressed an utter inability to conceive of anyone who would harm upon either her father or her brother. The only past trouble she could recall was a burglary at the home in 2017, during which a .38 revolver, some jewelry, and a laptop were stolen. To the experienced eye of the detective, the notion that those same burglars would return a year later for a double homicide, stealing only wallets and a vehicle without entering the house, seemed highly improbable. This past incident, however, would later take on a chilling significance. The investigation then turned to the neighbors. One resident, whose property was separated by merely 2 football fields, recounted hearing a single gunshot followed by a scream. Then another gunshot, around 8:45 Furlong M the night before. He hadn't reported it at the time. Gunshots being a common, though unfortunate, sound in that rural area. Yet the timing precisely correlated with Samantha S. information, providing a crucial temporal anchor for the murders. Detective Sestare, having secured the car, awaited the forensic analysis of the precious DNA evidence. Cigarette butts and the skull cap, both yielding a single-source DNA profile, were veritable gold in an investigation, definitively pointing to one individual. The excitement within the department was palpable. The expectation was a swift match against CODIS, the national DNA database. A white male profile was quickly established, fueling hopes that the killer would be easily identified. However, the subsequent weeks delivered a disheartening blow. CODIS returned no match. The killer was not in the database. As months stretched into a year, then too, the frustration mounted. Forensic genealogy, a relatively newer investigative tool, was proposed. The concept involved uploading the unknown DNA profile to public genealogical databases, then identifying relatives, eventually tracing the family tree to narrow down a suspect. This was a painstaking process, a marathon of dedicated investigative work, requiring immense patience and an acute awareness of the passage of time, with memories fading and potential witnesses becoming harder to locate. During this extended period, Samantha Rabon, remarkably, relocated into her deceased father's home with her husband and children. This swift move, coupled with her equally rapid actions in claiming Robert's assets and insurance policies, raised initial questions amongst the investigators. It was learned that Robert Ford possessed significant life insurance policies and valuable land. While Samantha was a beneficiary, it was Robbie, her half-brother, who was the primary beneficiary. His death was necessary for Samantha to become the sole claimant. The acquisition of these funds and the subsequent renovations to her new home certainly put her under increased, albeit covert, scrutiny. This apparent benefiting from the deaths of her father and brother was a red flag for the investigative team, a motive now beginning to solidify. Then, in August 2022 years, to the day after the gruesome discovery, the DNA lab delivered a breakthrough. A partial match had been found through the arduous genealogical search. The suspect, they now knew, had 2 brothers, both, remarkably, incarcerated. Their DNA was already in the system. The crucial detail was they had been in jail at the time of the murders, eliminating them as direct perpetrators. However, their familial DNA provided the crucial link. From this genetic lineage, a potential suspect emerged: Randy Granger. Randy Granger had a substantial criminal history, having served approximately 15 years in prison. Crucially, cell tower data placed his phone in the vicinity of the burned vehicle at the time of the crime. Even more significantly, his phone records revealed a call to a Teresa Martin that fateful night. Teresa Martin was quickly identified as Randy Granger's girlfriend and, chillingly, a distant cousin of Samantha Rabon's mother. The converging lines of evidence were too stark to ignore. Randy Granger's DNA at the car, his call to Samantha's relative on the night of the murders. The investigation had finally found its target. With this powerful nexus of evidence, detectives moved to interview Teresa Martin and Randy Granger. Separated into different rooms, the interrogation began. Randy, confronted with images of the burned vehicle and the cigarette butts bearing his DNA, feigned ignorance, claiming never to have seen the car, expressing no knowledge of his presence there. His denials were met with the detective's firm resolve, the gravity of the situation underscored by the mention of 2 counts of murder. The wall of denial he erected, however, eventually gave way. Teresa Martin, in her own interrogation, initially sidestepped questions about Randy's whereabouts and activities on the night of the murders. But under sustained, patient questioning, a process investigators called progressive truth-telling, she began to reveal fragments of the truth she admitted. Randy had called her to pick him up. He got into the car, uttered "let us go home," and offered no further explanation. But the relentless pursuit of truth by the detectives eventually broke her resistance, exposing the chilling betrayal at the heart of the case. Randy, she confessed, had told her he had been hired to do a job. When pressed on who had hired him, she uttered the name that sent a shockwave through the investigation. Samantha. The job? To kill her daddy. Teresa further revealed that about a week before the murders, she had overheard Randy and Samantha discussing the plan. Samantha, driven by a cold, calculated ambition, needed to eliminate both her father and Robbie. The intricate web of Robert S. assets, pension plans, life insurance, and extensive land holdings, totaling nearly $1 million, revealed the sinister financial motive. Robbie, being the primary beneficiary, stood in the way of Samantha S.'s complete inheritance. His death, alongside her father S., was essential for her to become the sole beneficiary. Teresa recounted how she had driven Randy to Robert's home, dropping him off. Randy, she claimed, obtained the murder weapon from Samantha, a .38 caliber handgun. He intended to wait in the woods until Robert and Robbie returned home, meticulously timing his ambush. There was a chilling text message from Teresa to Samantha that night, "Mott met home alone," which Samantha later, under police questioning, admitted was their code signifying that Randy had been dropped off at the murder scene. The culmination of Teresa S.'s confession provided detectives with the critical evidence needed to secure an arrest warrant for Samantha. 2 years to the day after the murders, Samantha Rabon was arrested at her Mother S. residence, charged with murder and criminal conspiracy. The news sent ripples of shock and disbelief throughout the close-knit Christian community. Many, upon hearing the rumors, initially dismissed them, unable to reconcile the accusations with the young lady they had grown to know. The betrayal, the coldness of the motive, was utterly incomprehensible to them. Samantha, upon her arrest, maintained her silence, refusing to acknowledge any involvement. But the investigators had anticipated this. With a warrant in hand, they seized her cell phone, turning it over to a detective specializing in electronic crimes. What unfolded next was a journey into the dark recesses of Samantha's mind. Keyword searches for terms like insurance, murder, and various combinations revealed a chilling online history. Among the more damning searches were inquiries into how quickly you can clean up a double homicide, how quickly can you get a passport, and the morally burdened, does God forgive murderers? The discovery of can you be a suspect in a murder and never get charged? Painted a clear picture of premeditation, a calculated assessment of legal risk and moral consequence. This digital footprint decisively exposed her significant, orchestrating role in the deaths of her father and brother. With Samantha Rabon now formally charged, the case shifted into the hands of the prosecutors, whose strategy hinged on turning the co-conspirators against her. Teresa Martin, having already confessed significant aspects of her involvement, quickly agreed to cooperate and testify. Randy Granger, however, remained initially defiant. Recognizing the complexities of trying both individuals simultaneously, the prosecution decided to try Randy first. On April 3rd, 2023, Teresa Martin pleaded guilty to being an accessory after the fact. Her agreement to testify at both Randy S. and Samantha S. trials solidified her role as a key witness for the state. On the very same day, she provided crucial testimony at Randy Granger's trial. Concurrently, a buccal swab, a known DNA standard, was collected from Randy. This sample was dispatched to SLED, the State Law Enforcement Division, which confirmed a definitive match to the single-source DNA profile found on the cigarette butts and the skull cap at the burned vehicle. The scientific evidence was undeniable. Randy Granger was found guilty and subsequently sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms for the brutal murders of Robert and Robbie Ford. Randy's conviction brought about a significant change of heart. Facing a future behind bars, he agreed to testify against Samantha Rabon. His account began to dismantle the carefully constructed facade of family harmony that Samantha had presented. According to Randy, Samantha's relationship with her father and brother was not as idyllic as investigators had initially been led to believe. Samantha, the child of a previous marriage, may have felt a simmering resentment towards Robbie, who had grown up had both his parents together, perhaps perceiving him as the favored child in the family dynamic. There were whispers and discussions about Samantha's unhappiness concerning Robbie potentially receiving a larger share of the inheritance. This simmering discontent, fueled by perceived injustice and financial desperation, ignited the murderous plot. Randy recounted how Samantha approached him at her mother home, proposing the unspeakable. She supplied him with the .38 caliber handgun, instructing him that both Robert and Robbie had to die simultaneously. Her offer $20,000 for the heinous act. Approximately a week later, Randy and Teresa set the plan into motion. Teresa dropped Randy off at the Ford residence. Randy, a chilling testament to his cold resolve, spent hours waiting in the shadows, smoking cigarettes, knowing Robert and Robbie would be at dinner, simply awaiting their return. Around 8:45 p.m., the sound of tires crunching on the gravel driveway announced their arrival. Robert Ford, exiting the passenger side of Robbie's car first, began walking towards the back steps of his home. In a moment of chilling efficiency, Randy shot Robert Ford in the face. The scream that followed confirmed Robbie's horror and his desperate attempt to flee. Randy pursued him, firing a shot into Robbie's back, then, in a calculated coup de grace, a final shot to the back of Robbie's head. Randy then returned to Robert, delivering another shot under his chin, ensuring the finality of his gruesome task. The wallets were taken, and the keys to Robbie's Ford escape. Randy then drove the vehicle to the soybean field, attempting to burn it to ashes, a futile attempt to erase the evidence of his crime. Once the vehicle was ablaze, Randy contacted Teresa for his pickup. In his macabre attempt at an escape, Randy made several critical yet ultimately fatal errors. He had smoked an entire pack of cigarettes while waiting, a trail of physical evidence. In a misguided attempt to conceal them, he had tucked the butts into his socks, only for them to fall out near the burning car. The ski cap, too, which he assumed would be destroyed in the fire, remained largely intact, an additional DNA-rich artifact. His biggest oversight, however, was in the arson itself. He neglected to open the car windows, starving the fire of oxygen and causing it to quickly smolder, preserving crucial evidence rather than obliterating it. And, in a final ironic twist, Randy Granger never received the $20,000 Samantha had promised him for the murders. His act of betrayal was ultimately met with her own. With Randy and Teresa's compelling testimony, prosecutors were confident in their ability to convict Samantha Rabon, However, the uncertainties of a jury trial loomed large. The defense would undoubtedly attempt to discredit Randy, the confessed killer, painting him as a self-serving witness, seeking a more lenient sentence. The clear motive of financial gain remained the prosecution's strongest asset. On February 21, 2024, a full 6 years after the discovery of the two bodies, Samantha Rabon stood trial for the murders of her father and half-brother. The courtroom, a microcosm of the divided community, was packed. On one side, the victim's family and friends desperate for justice. On the other, a few supporters for Samantha, including her husband clinging to a fading hope. Prosecutors leaned heavily on Randy Granger's testimony. His detailed, albeit horrific, account resonated with a chilling ring of truth, making it powerfully effective. The prosecution wove a narrative of premeditation, highlighting the 2017 burglary at Robert S. home, where the murder weapon, the .38 caliber revolver, was stolen. This suggested that Samantha had harbored these dark intentions for at least a year, perhaps intending to use her father's own firearm against him. The prosecution argued that Samantha had reached a breaking point, her financial expenditures far exceeding her income. The almost $1 million inheritance represented a desperate solution to her fiscal woes, a solution that tragically cost her family. Samantha's defense, as anticipated, vigorously attacked Randy's credibility, portraying him as an untrustworthy, manipulative individual whose testimony was driven by self-preservation. They emphasized the fact that the murder weapon itself was never recovered, despite Randy's claim of having thrown it into a creek. Samantha herself remained steadfast in her denial, insisting that benefiting from her family's death did not inherently make her a murderer. However, after only 2 hours of deliberation, on February 28, 2024, the jury delivered its verdict. Samantha Rabon was found guilty. The raw emotion in the courtroom was palpable, a mix of relief, grief, and enduring shock. She was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Despite the undeniable evidence and the conviction, for some, the complete devastation and psychological ramifications of such a familial betrayal continued to haunt. How could one of their own, raised within a community of faith, commit such an unimaginable act for money? Although Randy Granger's cooperation proved instrumental in securing Samantha's conviction, it afforded him little leniency. The state's motion to have his sentence reduced was largely unsuccessful. His 2 consecutive life terms were merely commuted to 2 concurrent life terms, offering him only a minimal break. Yet, for Robert's family and the larger community, a profound sense of relief washed over them. The pursuit of justice, painstaking and prolonged, had finally reached its conclusion. Robert, deeply cherished in his church and among his wide circle of friends, received the justice his community had so desperately sought. The human cost of avarice, the complete disintegration of familial bonds for financial gain, stood as a stark and sobering lesson. Samantha's insatiable greed had consumed her, leading her down a path of unspeakable betrayal and murder. From a criminal psychology standpoint, this case is a chilling study in calculated malevolence, driven almost entirely by the insatiable appetite of greed. Samantha Rabon embodied the classic profile of a perpetrator who prioritizes financial gain over human life, even the lives of those closest to her. Her perceived financial woes, rather than leading her to legitimate solutions, twisted into a rationale for patricide and fratricide. The gradual development of her plot, from the 2017 burglary, where she likely orchestrated the theft of the murder weapon, to her extensive internet searches, reveals a chilling level of premeditation and an acute awareness of the legal consequences. Her digital queries about how quickly you can clean up a double homicide and does God forgive murderers speak volumes of an internal struggle between her moral compass, however warped, and her overwhelming desire for illicit wealth. It underscores a personality capable of detaching from empathy, viewing family members not as beloved individuals, but as obstacles to be removed. The sophistication of her initial attempt to conceal the crime by staging it as a robbery gone wrong, and her efforts to procure Randy Granger showcase a degree of cunning. However, her flaws lay in the execution and her overestimation of her accomplice abilities to erase all evidence. The amateurish mistakes, the unburnt cigarettes, the surviving skull cap, the car fire starved of oxygen demonstrate that while the plotting was insidious, the practical application of her plan was riddled with vulnerabilities. This contrast between grand criminal design and imperfect execution is often seen in cases where the primary orchestrator relies on others who lack the meticulousness required for a perfect crime. The code message about Randy's drop-off, a seemingly minor detail, became a crucial piece of the puzzle, illustrating that even subtle communications can betray a conspirator. For detectives, this case offers profound lessons in the relentless pursuit of truth. The initial impression of a simple robbery, albeit a brutal one, quickly dissolved under the scrutiny of experienced eyes. The lack of forced entry, the specific targeting of the victims, and the staged nature of the car burning immediately flagged it as something more personal. The police's unwavering focus on forensic evidence, particularly the seemingly insignificant cigarette butts and ski cap, proved to be the cornerstone of the entire investigation. This highlights the indispensable role of careful crime scene processing and the collection of every potential lead, no matter how small. The decision to leverage forensic genealogy, even when traditional DNA databases yielded no hits, was a stroke of brilliant investigative perseverance. It demonstrates how law enforcement must continually adapt to evolving technologies and innovative methodologies to solve complex, seemingly intractable cases. This approach, while resource-intensive and requiring significant patience, offers a powerful tool for justice when other avenues are exhausted. It teaches police that there are always new frontiers in forensics to explore. Furthermore, the patient interrogation techniques employed with Teresa Martin, allowing for progressive truth-telling, illustrate the art of interviewing. Instead of immediately alienating her, detectives slowly peeled back layers of denial, building trust or at least eroding resistance until the full extent of the conspiracy was laid bare. This measured approach often yields confessions where aggressive tactics might only solidify silence. The interconnectedness of criminals, even distant family connections, always serves as a viable avenue for investigation. Who do they know? Remains a primary question. Life lessons from this tragic case resonate deeply within the human experience. It serves as a stark warning about the corrosive power of greed, capable of eroding even the most sacred of bonds. Family. The pursuit of wealth, when untethered from morality and empathy, can lead individuals down unfathomable paths of destruction. The community's initial disbelief in Samantha's culpability speaks to the human tendency to project a sense of good onto those we know, struggling to reconcile familiar faces with heinous acts. This case tragically illustrates that evil can indeed reside close to home, masquerading behind an everyday facade. It underscores the importance of being vigilant and recognizing changes in behavior or extreme financial distress as potential warning signs while always maintaining compassion. Moreover, the story profoundly honors the tireless dedication of law enforcement. The 6-year journey from the gruesome discovery to the final conviction was a testament to their unwavering commitment to justice. The patience required for the DNA analysis, the intricate tracing through genealogical records, the meticulous interviews, and the skillful courtroom presentation all exemplify the relentless pursuit that defines true detective work. It reinforces faith in the justice system, even when it moves at what sometimes feels like a glacial pace. The efforts of Detective Sester and his team brought closure, not just to a grieving family, but to an entire community left shattered by such a profound betrayal. Ultimately, this saga of betrayal and murder, while rooted in profound tragedy, ends with the triumph of justice. It reminds us that even the most carefully crafted plots, designed to deceive and mislead, inevitably unravel under the piercing gaze of dedicated investigators and the power of forensic science. The pursuit of truth, though arduous, illuminates the darkest corners of human nature and ultimately ensures that those who commit hot acts are held accountable for their actions, offering a glimmer of hope and restoration of faith in the pursuit of good over evil. The moral bankruptcy of one individual could not withstand the collective dedication to upholding justice, bringing an end to the horrific chapter that scarred Horry County. The community, once reeling in shock, found solace in the affirmation that even in the face of unspeakable betrayal, justice, though sometimes delayed, is never truly denied. This powerful narrative stands as a perpetual testament to human frailty, the corrupting influence of avarice, and the unwavering resolve of justice to prevail. The chilling narrative of January 17, 2010, unfurled under the unforgiving gaze of the early morning hours in Shreveport, Louisiana, a day that etched itself permanently into the annals of tragedy and the challenging work of law enforcement. It began with the desperate, tremulous voice of a young woman, 24-year-old Camethea Coleman, piercing the pre-dawn stillness through an emergency phone call, reporting an unthinkable act of violence. Her boyfriend, Brian Spinks, along with herself, had been brutally attacked. The initial moments of a crisis are often shrouded in confusion, a maelstrom of fear and disarray, and this instance was no exception. Camethea, frantic and seemingly in shock, conveyed fragmented details, speaking of an assailant who had vanished into the darkness, his whereabouts unknown. The raw terror in her voice, the disjointed pleas for help, all painted a picture of pure, unadulterated distress, a tableau that would set the stage for a convoluted and emotionally charged investigation. Within mere minutes, an impressive response from Shreveport finest converged upon the stated address, a testament to the urgency of Camethea's distress call. There, they discovered a site that no amount of training could truly prepare one for, yet one they were duty-bound to confront. 29-year-old Brian Spinks lay motionless by the entrance, a grim sentinel to the horror that had transpired within. The officers, trained to observe, to document, to process the initial data points of a crisis, immediately noted the extensive and horrific injuries. Stab wounds marred his head, a testament to a ferocity that defied immediate comprehension, and a ghastly slash across his throat spoke of a final lethal blow. The sheer volume of blood inside the apartment was staggering, its viscous presence evident not just to the eye but to the ear, with the chilling sound of liquid squishing beneath their boots as they moved through the living room carpet, an auditory testament to the life that had been so savagely extinguished. Brian Spinks, they quickly and tragically ascertained, was beyond earthly help. In stark contrast to the motionless figure of Brian, Camethea Coleman was a whirlwind of raw, visceral emotion. She screamed, her cries echoing the profound shock and disbelief of witnessing such a catastrophic event, her questions of why hanging heavy in the blood-scented air. Law enforcement, operating under the established protocols for crime scene integrity and victim support, moved swiftly to secure the apartment, an initial perimeter established to preserve any potential evidence from contamination. Camethea was gently but firmly escorted out, the officers attempting the delicate task of calming her, of eliciting a coherent account from a mind clearly reeling from trauma. She presented as a person utterly overcome, covered from head to toe in the stark, accusing evidence of the violence, her state of profound shock palpable, her distress undeniable. When pressed for a description of the perpetrator, she offered details consistent vacep. Itat her earlier fragmented reports. A man with dreadlocks, clad in a red shirt. He had fled, she stated, his direction of escape unknown to her. From a criminal psychology perspective, the initial state of a trauma victim is often one of disassociation, fragmented memory, and emotional overload. It is a known phenomenon that the immediate aftermath of a terrifying event can impede a person's ability to recall specific details, velkepte, hot, perfect clarity. This reality often presents an initial challenge for investigators, who must delicately navigate the fragility of a traumatized mind, while simultaneously seeking crucial factual information. Camethea's physical injuries, multiple lacerations to her hands, abdomen, and leg, further underscored her victim status, necessitating immediate medical attention. She was transported to a hospital, allowing homicide detectives, now arriving on scene, to assume control of the painstaking investigative process. Before delving into the grim confines of the apartment, the detectives engaged with two individuals already present, identified as friends of Camethea Coleman. Their vehicle, located in the apartment complex, had drawn the attention of the initial responding officers. These friends explained. They had arrived to check on Camethea after she had not answered her phone, a small act of concern that now placed them unwittingly at the edge of a horrific crime. Witness interviews are foundational to any investigation, offering crucial insights into the broader context of the victims' lives, their relationships, and the preceding events. For law enforcement, a priority rapidly crystallized: understanding the lives of Brian Spinks and Camethea Coleman. Who were they, truly? And, most critically, who harbored such animosity, such malice, to inflict this unimaginable violence upon either, or both, of them? The motivation behind such a brutal act is often the key that unlocks the truth. Brian Dennis Spinks, a name that would now be tragically etched into the public consciousness, had entered the world on December 15, 1980, in the bustling city of St. Louis, Missouri. His was a life steeped in a proud legacy of military service, a thread woven deeply into the fabric of his family history. The second child, but the first son, Brian, was followed by two younger brothers, a familial unit rooted in tradition and duty. His father had served in the military, and his mother dedicated her career as a Department of Defense employee for security assistance. This lineage extended back through generations, a testament to patriotic service, from his great-grandfather's Korean War experience to both his father and grandfather serving in World War II, and finally, his own stint in the Marine Corps. Such a background often instills a strong sense of discipline, responsibility, and commitment, qualities that would define much of Brian's character. Following his graduation from high school in 1999, Brian, true to his family's esteemed tradition, enlisted in the United States Air Force. However, before his deployments began, a significant personal event reshaped his life. In the summer of 2000, a former high school sweetheart reconnected with him. She recalled Brian's attractiveness, his remarkable smile, and the beginning of a 6-month courtship that led her to believe she was pregnant. Indeed, in January 2001, Brian embraced the profound responsibility of fatherhood. Yet, the demands of military life, particularly the unwavering priority of service, placed immense strain on their budding romance. The mother of his first child often felt isolated, acknowledging the military's preeminence in Brian's life. He was on a path to a full military career, a trajectory that promised a stable and secure future, ensuring excellent prospects for employment after his service. Shortly after his son, Amani, was born, Brian faced deployment to Iraq, embarking on long tours, performing his duties with dedication. Despite the geographical distances, he conscientiously maintained contact with his son and fostered a respectful co-parenting relationship with Amani's mother. Though the challenges inherent in a long-distance relationship, especially as Amani grew older, were undeniably difficult, when they did manage to spend time together, it was cherished, marked by mutual affection, and though their goodbyes were tearful, there was an understanding of his honorable service to his country. During his stationing in Montgomery, Brian experienced another significant life event, fathering a daughter with another woman who was also serving in the Air Force. This relationship, too, navigated the complexities of military life, and once she became pregnant, she was discharged from the Air Force, returning to Buffalo, New York. Brian once again did his utmost to be a present father from afar, though opportunities to see his daughter were regrettably few. Yet, amidst these personal challenges, his focus during deployment remained steadfastly on the well-being of the men in his unit. In 2002, while stationed at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, Brian met another airman who would become a close friend. He was remembered as an innate organizer, fostering a strong sense of camaraderie among his peers. For many, with families scattered across different countries and states, Brian cultivated a sense of community, ensuring they had a place to gather and find solace, creating a surrogate family in the face of immense geographical distance. By the time Brian returned home in 2008, a different chapter in his life was beckoning. He was ready to dedicate more attention to his family, particularly his son. His ex-partner noted that his homecoming was always about Amani, marked by positive communication, genuine care, and a steadfast desire to ensure his son wanted for nothing. It was later that year, at a casual get-together with friends, that Brian met someone new, a young woman who seemed to embody a vibrant and wholesome spirit, Kemethia Coleman. Kemethia hailed from a small town situated approximately 30 minutes outside of Shreveport, a place where, by all accounts, she was widely adored and respected. Her popularity was a consistent theme in her life, a prom queen, a homecoming queen. She seemed to embody a quintessential American success story. Her close acquaintances described her as an exceptionally sweet girl, deeply committed to her faith, attending church almost every Sunday. Her academic journey led her to Grambling State University, where she pursued a life of service, becoming a social worker, dedicating her energies to assisting and uplifting others. She appeared to be, by all external measures, the epitome of the perfect partner. Charming, compassionate, and family-oriented, someone one would proudly introduce to their loved ones. Brian, who had navigated the complexities of military life and past relationships, had never displayed such profound seriousness about anyone until Chemithea entered his life. Tragically, a little over a year into their relationship, his life was violently cut short by an unknown assailant, a shocking end to a promising future. As the raw facts of Brian Spink's life were painstakingly compiled, detectives also honed in on the two women who had been found outside the couple's apartment, potential witnesses whose insights might illuminate the dark corners of the unfolding tragedy. One was a longtime friend of Chemithea, Cold Mans, the other her sister. Their collective account painted a picture of a tumultuous evening. They confirmed they had spent the earlier part of the day and evening with Chemithea at a club downtown in Shreveport. Chemithea, they reported, seemed noticeably upset that night, and the source of her disquiet, they indicated, was connected to another man. She had confided in them about a specific individual, a guy named John with dreads, who she claimed had been following her. One of the sisters recalled seeing someone fitting this general description at the club, but conceded that, at the time, many African American males wore dreadlocks, and therefore, nothing specific about him had truly stood out or seemed suspicious. They also confirmed Brian's presence at the club that evening. However, neither Brian nor Chemithea lingered for long. A brief, seemingly charged conversation between them led to Brian's departure, followed minutes later by Chemithea's exit. The friends, noticing her absence, also left, intending to ensure Chemithea had safely departed, only to discover her car was no longer present. Their subsequent drive to Brian's apartment, fueled by concern, led them into the unfolding nightmare, where they encountered the commotion and the arrival of the police, instantly sensing the profound wrongness of the situation. To the detectives observing their emotional state and their account, the women appeared genuinely distressed and truthful, providing the first tangible, albeit hazy, lead: the elusive John. With this crucial, yet incomplete information, the investigative machine, powered by diligent inquiry, was truly set in motion, now urgently requiring a direct conversation with Chemithea to peel back the layers of her story and unmask the identity and motive of this alleged stalker.